Welcome everybody to our Study in the UK workshop as part of the virtual UK University Fair. We are so excited that you're here today to learn all about the options that are available to you in the UK. Excited that you're here today to learn all about the options that are available to you in the UK. Okay, and just a couple of technical things. I'm going to put myself on mute in just one moment. So in just a minute, I'm going to pass it on over to Miss Danielle, who's going to introduce our representatives that are here today. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you learn a whole lot and join us for the Q&A that will happen following this presentation, as well as the virtual fair coming up at 7 p.m. And over to you, Danielle.
Great, thank you so much, Alyssa. So I'm going to kick things off for us today just by giving a quick introduction to myself and my colleagues who are joining me on this session today. So we've actually got representatives from universities all over the UK. So myself, Danielle Carr, I'm the Regional Manager for Southeast Asia at Newcastle University. We've then got Megan Cooper, who is an International Officer at the University of Cardiff. We've got Emily Page, who's Regional Manager for Americas and Southeast Asia at the University of Central Lancashire. And Rosanna Radford, International Officer from Nottingham Trent University. So quite a wide selection of universities from all over the UK. And we all work in our respective universities' international departments or offices. So it's our job to meet with students and parents from all around Southeast Asia and provide advice and guidance and information about what it's like to study in the UK. So with that in mind, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what our presentation today is going to cover. So I'm going to start off by a quick overview of the benefits of studying in the UK and why so many people from all around the world value the UK higher education system. We're then going to talk about the different types of institutions that students can study at and the sorts of things you should think about when making that decision. We'll talk about selecting the right programme, the right course, and how that's linked with what you want to do after you've graduated from university. We'll give you a little bit of practical advice on what goes into preparing your application and what to expect. Some of you may already be a little familiar with the UK application process, so we'll share some top tips and advice on what to expect with that. And then finally, we're going to conclude our presentation with some information about student lifestyle and what to expect from living in the UK as well as studying there, and a bit of information about some of the practical things you need to consider, such as the cost of living during your overseas study. And then at the end, we're happy to take any questions and answer those. However, if you do have questions as we're presenting and you're hearing from myself and colleagues, then feel free to comment those in the live stream and we can pick those up at the end as well. So I think it would be really useful to just give you a bit of an overview as to why the UK remains, why the UK remains a really popular study destination for students from all around the world. It's obviously known for having a very rich history of academic excellence that spans back centuries. And we're going to talk about the different types of institutions you'll find in the UK. But really embedded with that rich history and the reputation that comes with that. In total, there's 162 government-regulated institutions or universities in the UK, which is quite a lot when you consider that we are actually quite a small island. But those institutions being regulated by our government means that there is a certain level of quality and standard that must be met by all universities who wish to award degrees to students. It's known for its innovative and cutting-edge teaching methods and research methods and output. Most of this can be seen, the impacts of our research can be seen worldwide. So if you're a student who's particularly interested in research and how that, affects wider society and the reach of that beyond the UK and around the world, that's something you'll definitely find from many UK institutions. It provides a really safe, multicultural environment for students to learn in. The population of the UK itself is incredibly diverse, but particularly at universities and in university towns and cities, you will find a really diverse mix of people from different backgrounds. And this provides a very welcoming atmosphere to all of our students, no matter where they come from. There's a real emphasis at UK universities on student well-being. So really placing that at the forefront of everything that we do is that we want our students to succeed. We want them to be happy. We want them to make the most out of their time whilst they're at university. And so student well-being is a huge priority for all institutions in the UK. In terms of the type of learning and teaching at UK institutions, and we'll hear a little bit more about this in a few slides, but there is a really big emphasis in the UK on independent learning and in students gaining those critical thinking skills and independent study skills so that you're equipped with the knowledge and the ability to take what you've learned in your degree and to apply that in the real world. So it's not an education system where you're going to be fed information and taught how to regurgitate that in an exam or an essay. There's a big sort of emphasis on you as an individual and taking what you've learned and applying that in different settings and situations. There's also a big emphasis at many universities, and certainly from the ones that you'll be hearing from today, on graduate prospects and what are the opportunities for students after they've graduated. Many students choose to do a degree, a bachelor degree or a master degree, because they're thinking about their future career plans and where they want to go as the next step in their future. So many universities have a big emphasis on how their program, how their provision will enable students to succeed after they've graduated, whether that means staying in the UK, which leads me on to my next point about the post-study work opportunities in the UK, or whether they're going to choose to travel or reside elsewhere after they've completed their studies. But one of the most attractive opportunities in the UK at the moment is the post-study work, and the fact that currently students who complete their studies at a UK institution can stay for up to 2 years on the graduate route visa, enabling them to get that valuable work experience in the UK after their studies have completed. And we've seen some really great success stories of students who've done that in a really wide range of fields and disciplines. And then finally, I think many of you may be aware of this, but in terms of the duration of study in the UK, this is often shorter than a lot of other countries. And I've said specifically majority English-speaking countries such as the US or Australia, where a bachelor with honours degree takes 3 years to complete from start to finish, whereas it can often take 4 or even 5 years in other countries. So you're still getting the same level of qualification, the same recognition from that degree, but able to complete it in a shorter time span, which means you're then able to take that next step, whether that's in your career or in further study, sooner than if you had studied elsewhere. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Megan.
Thank you, Danielle. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about the different regions we have in the UK and the different universities that we have. So the United Kingdom is made up of 4 regions. So there is England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And just for reference, I've included here on the slide the different cities where our universities are located. So as Daniel mentioned earlier, you can see that we're from all different parts of the UK. So the higher education system in the UK is the same in England, Northern Ireland and Wales. So a typical bachelor's degree is 3 years in length. So this is unless you are studying a course such as medicine, dentistry or architecture, or maybe you've chosen a course that has a placement year. But typically, as Danielle mentioned, our degrees are 3 years in length. Whereas in Scotland, a typical bachelor's degree is 4 years in length. So there are over 150 universities across England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and these fall into different categories. So we have Russell Group universities. So these are research intensive universities and they consist of 24 members and they produce world-class research. We also have polytechnic or metropolitan universities, and these universities have evolved from polytechnics or for further education colleges and other higher education institutions. We also have ancient universities, and as the name suggests, these are very old universities. So they were established in medieval or Renaissance times, typically established between 1096 to 1582. And these universities still continue to exist to date. We have red brick or Cyric universities, and these were established in the 19th century during World War I. Typically in the major industrial cities in the UK, and they were established to meet the growing demand for university level studies. We also have plate glass universities or 1960s universities, and these were formed between 1963 and 1992. And these are popularly known as plate glass group because of their architectural style. So most of them are built on designated greenfield sites. It's also quite important to mention that some universities can fall into one or more of these categories. So for example, you can have an ancient university, which is also a Russell Group university. So it just shows the range of opportunities and the range of choices that students have to study in the UK. So moving on now to choosing the right course and right university for you. So it really is a personal decision, and it's one that you should research extensively. So where do you start with your research? With over 40,000 courses to choose from, research in different degrees will really help you make sure that you make the perfect choice for you. So to help you choose the right course, there are some considerations to make. So first off, what are your areas of interest? So can you study this subject for 3 or more years? So for example, to study English literature, it's quite likely that you'll want to have an interest in reading. What about your aptitude? So do you have a natural ability for the subject? So if maths isn't particularly your strong point, then maybe a degree in engineering isn't the right one for you. Of course, you want to consider your future career. So can this degree help you achieve your career goals? So for example, if you aspire to become a solicitor or a lawyer, it's quite likely then that you'll want to study a degree in law. And of course, importantly, the entry requirements. So making sure that you've done your research and you have understanding of what the course entry requirements are. So do you meet those entry requirements? Are there any subject specific requirements? So for example, the requirement to have biology if you want to study a biosciences course. And then once you've decided the right course for you, you're going to want to then choose the right university. So really have a think about what you need to be a successful and happy student. So you can do this through research in your universities. You can look at different league tables, and many league tables rank different things. So student satisfaction, teaching, and there's lots of different things you consider when looking at these. And the things that we think is really important to consider when you are choosing the university for you are things like student support. So what are the support services available at that university? Or academic expertise. So if you are interested in studying engineering, for example, which university has got specific expertise within that subject? Extracurricular facilities. So what societies are on offer at that university? Do they have the sports club that you really enjoy playing? What's the students' union like? The location and environment is also an important consideration. So where in the UK is it that you want to be based? Would you like to be based in the city centre, or would you rather be based in a more rural area of the UK? The industry links and careers support available at that university? Or would you rather be on a campus or city centre based university? And this is something that we'll touch on in a slide's time. The student experience is also a really important consideration, and the employability rate at that university and within the course that you're interested in. Does that university offer opportunities to study abroad or have a year in industry? And then also rankings. So although rankings are a good measure of quality, it's not something to get too hung up on. There are lots of different factors that's really important to consider when you are choosing the right university for you, to make sure that you've got an overall good experience at that university. So just moving on to the next slide. So what is the best way to decide? So all of the universities in the UK will offer the opportunity to join open days or to have campus tours. But of course, that can be a little bit tricky considering that you will need to travel for that. So if you're not able to visit the university, there's lots of different ways that you can do your research to help you decide. So you can research online using university websites, you can use social media accounts, and you can also go on YouTube as well and watch videos of that university. You can speak to current students. So many universities have things like UniBuddy or similar, where it gives you the opportunity to speak to current students that are studying that course. And there's also opportunities to join virtual open days, virtual events. Universities can often put on taster sessions or webinars, and of course speak to people like myself or my colleagues who will be able to give you lots of information about the university. And once you've decided on the best university for you, then you'll then go into look at making your application. So this leads me nicely onto the next segment of the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to touch a little bit on preparing your application. Now this is quite a busy slide, and apologies for that. There's quite a lot of information. I'm starting with extracurricular activities because we know that you guys are doing really well in your academics, you're working really, really hard, and you want other ways to stand out when you're making applications to universities. Or perhaps you're doing really well in most of your classes, but you're falling down in one area, so you want to try and make up for that in your extracurricular. So something to think about when you are doing applications or choosing extracurricular activities is that UK universities are actually not very impressed by just big long lists of extracurricular activities. If you just give us a big long bullet point list of literally everything you have done while you've been in high school, it's not really telling us an awful lot about who you are and what you want from the future. So there's a few things to think about. So first of all, if you're at a stage where you're choosing what extracurricular activities to get involved with, the things to think about is
what can you do that's going to show the experience that you may need for the program that you want to have, or show skills that you need for the program that you want to study at university? Is there anything specific that the universities you're interested in, or if you don't know the universities yet, that the kind of subject areas that you're interested in are asking for? So if you're interested in medicine, you're going to want to perhaps try and get some experience in healthcare environments. If you're interested in art design, then you're not going to need to do that. You're going to look in other areas. But it doesn't have to just be specifically about that. It can be in other different skills to show that the non-academic skills that you have are relevant to the course. So that could be that you are in the debate club and you're interested in medicine, the debate club and you're interested in art and design, and you can spin the same extracurricular activity in lots and lots of different ways. When you're looking at programs that you're wanting to do, this is often the most relevant for those professional programs. So the things like medicine and dentistry and architecture and physiotherapy and things like that. But the thing to think about is make sure you're going to enjoy the extracurricular activity, because it's also supposed to be fun while you're doing it. It's not just so that you can have a list of things. Think about quality over quantity of the things that you're choosing to do. What does it add to your life? What does it add to your skill set when you're making those decisions? If you've already been involved in extracurriculars, how do you present those extracurriculars when you're applying to the university? So first of all, if you're applying to university and they're asking for very specific extracurriculars or experiences or voluntary experiences and you don't have those, contact the university, because it will vary between university and it will vary between program whether you require to have those things in place before you apply or during the application period. Again, this is often the most important for things in the professional courses area, in the architecture, pharmacy, things like that. So say you've been in lots of different things, you were in the winning debate team, or you won the swim meet, or you won the local chess tournament. Well done, that's amazing. But tell me why I should care, because I need you to tell me that. Don't leave it up to the universities to decide why that is so good or why that is so important. And also, don't be afraid of telling us that you're involved with something where you're not the best and where you're not always winning. That isn't always the most relevant thing. Sometimes being involved in it and the skills that you are learning is actually more important than being the best at it. So always think about the things that you've done and what you're applying for and where those skill sets meet. It shows who you are as a person when you tell us those things. If you've done loads and loads and loads of different things, I'm just going to say it again, don't give us a list. Choose the most relevant, choose the most recent, and choose the most important, because that is what's going to speak to us. That is what is going to be the thing that we are looking at. Now, exactly where do you put this information? You can send us a CV or a resume or a list or a document that includes information about extracurricular activities. But not all universities are going to look at that. If it is not a requirement of the application process for that particular university or that particular program, it might not get looked at. So where the things are really, really relevant and you think really boosts your application, put it in the personal statement. Again, there may be some programs where there will be a separate document where you can put this information. And again, that's often most common in the professional programs where they may ask for things, skill sets or experience or volunteering or extracurriculars as part of the entry requirements. But the best things have in the personal statement. Tell us exactly what skills you developed, what did you learn, and how is that relevant to the course you're applying for? Tell us. Don't leave us to guess, because we might guess something that is actually not what you were trying to say. So please always tell us. Remember though, that your academics are usually the most important, but the experience, the skills, and the passion you have for those skills or the program you're applying for can make a difference in your application. Next slide, please. So you've learned loads of information in the previous slides, and you'll learn some more information in the next slides as well about how to choose where you're interested in going and what programs you're interested in. So when you're preparing your application, before you start doing that, you should have those thoughts in your about who are you applying to. Make sure it's possible to meet those academic requirements, because if you can't meet them, all those things about the extracurriculars may not make up for those academic skills. If you're not sure, contact the universities. Make sure you know who your top choices are and who your backup choices are. When you're making your application, whether it's directly with the university or whether it's on UCAS, make sure you're applying for the program and the course you actually want, because there might be lots of programs that are similar names. So do that research as well, because sometimes those can make the difference in terms of entry requirements. If you're still struggling in terms of you've narrowed it down, but you've still got quite a lot of choices and you're just not sure exactly, if you're applying through UCAS, who your top 5 are, then use that research that you've done to make your own ranking. We've discussed already that rankings are not always the best way to decide for yourself. But if it was a personalized ranking, then that is something that is very specific to you. And it is really useful exercise if you're still a little bit unsure. And the way to do that is literally think about the things that you think are really important for you. It's likely to include things like how you learn on the program you're applying for. It could be things to do with your accommodation. It could be where the campus is. Is it a campus university? Is it in a city centre? There's lots and lots of different things. And what level of importance things are will be different for everyone. And not everything is going to be relevant for you. So think about the things that are really important for you and then rank them. And you can give yourself a score for each of the courses or universities that you're interested in. And I've given you a really small example here. So say for me, the type of learning is really, really important for me. And I want it to be more practical because that's the way I learn best. And that is the most important thing. So I think that's worth 10 marks. And I think about the different courses that I'm interested in, and I give them a score out of 10. So you can see there, course 1 gets a 7 out of 10 because there's quite a lot of theory in year 1, but there's loads of theory and loads of practical in year 2 and 3. But in course 3, it's mostly theoretical. There's some practical, but it's out with most of the time that I would normally spend in the classroom. So I'm only giving it a 4 out of 10. Then I think accommodation is really important to me, but it's not as important as the type of learning. So I'm going to only score that out of 5. And I will look at the different courses and I can score them. You can do this for 3 things and 2 universities. You could do it for 6 universities and 5 different things. It's entirely up to you. It's just a really good way of focusing your mind on what is important to you. And if you're really struggling to make that decision with all of that wonderful research that you've done, it's a good exercise. Not everyone will need to do this. Sometimes you just know what the programs you really want are, and you don't have to do things like this. But sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. You have narrowed it down, but there's still so many choices to make. So this is a really good way for you to think about it as you're preparing to start doing your applications. Next slide, please. We talked earlier a little bit about making sure that you are meeting the entry requirements, but there are other things to think about as well. How competitive is it? Oh, sorry, I'm going into the wrong slides here. I'll do this one first. So thank you. So how competitive is it to gain entry into the program? This is often most important with, again, things like medicine and dentistry, and I know I've mentioned them before, but sometimes there's only a few places available, and you might there might only be 10 places and therefore only one of those 10 places is going to go to you. And so the chances are much, much lower. So think about those kind of things. Think about the requirements. Are you borderline? You're not sure if you're going to make it. Are you applying on time? I think your teachers are going to make sure that you're applying on time, but it's always something to bear in mind, because that might make a difference in how likely you are to get in. How many stages are there to go through? For many programs, you're going to put your application in and the personal statement and your reference and all of those kind of things, and then you will hear back. But for other things, there might be a process to go through. There might be interviews or auditions or portfolios or things like that. Next slide, please. So make sure you're giving the universities everything that they need. So check their websites. What are they asking for? Give them that information. If you're applying on UCAS, you can still email extra information to the universities direct if there's not a place for you to put it in the UCAS application. Remember that one application is going to 5 universities. You've probably heard this many, many times before, but it is really important. So when you're using a UCAS application, you're sending one application and then you're choosing 5 places for that to go. That could be 5 different courses at one university. It could be a similar course at 5 different universities, and it could be a combination of those kind of things, and often it is. Give yourself time to do this. Don't start doing all of these things 3 days before the deadline. That's just going to be stressful for you, your parents, and your teachers. So give yourself and give your teachers time as well, because there's going to be references that they have to do. And if all of you decide to do it the night before, then you're putting a lot of stress on yourself and on your teachers. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time. When you're filling in your application, and even more importantly, when you're filling in your personal statement or writing your personal statement, write it, walk away from it, and come back to it. You will be amazed at how different it will read 2 or 3 days later, because your head is not as in it at the time. And another tip is to read it out loud. Sometimes when you read things out loud, you pick up a sentence that just doesn't quite sound right, or you realize that you're kind of repeated the same thing. So that's a couple of tips more specifically for the personal statement. Next slide. So once you've submitted your application, what happens next? And again, I've touched on this, there's lots of different things that might happen. Hopefully it'll be really straightforward and you just have to wait for and hear from the university, but they may ask you for more information, they may invite you to interviews, they may ask you to write an essay or do a presentation. There's lots of different things. Usually it will tell you on the website, but there's also people like us at every UK university, and we can help you. Often the people like us are in departments that are slightly separate to the admissions teams. So the admissions teams are often there to help you with the functional things to do with your application, and we're here for the more general information and to guide you through the process. But if you're not sure, get in touch with the universities. Once you've made your application, you might get invited to online events. Attend them. It's a really great way to get another feeling for how the university is. You've done your research before you've applied. You're still doing research even after you've applied to see what's going to happen with your offers. So read the emails that you get, look on the website and the social media. Check your junk mail, just in case you get an email and it's gone into your junk mail. You always want to make sure that you're checking that, because you also want to make sure that you're meeting any deadlines you are given. Next slide. Yes, I forgot, that was that one there. But that's lots of information for you in terms of preparing your application. So hopefully you'll be able to go on and do some of that research, get yourself ready, and we're going to tell you about some of the stuff that's a little bit more exciting, and that's the student life in the UK, and I'll pass on to Rosanna for that.
Hey everybody, thanks for staying with us. I know it's a lot of information to take in, everything that you've had so far. I'm going to talk to you a bit about student life in the UK, so a bit of the fun stuff, but also a bit of the slightly more serious stuff. I'm going to go on to talk about the cost of living and things to think about in that regard. So I would say student life in the UK, having been a student in the UK for many years previously, there is something for everyone here. We're a small island, as my colleagues have mentioned. but there's lots of variety here in terms of things to do, whatever you're interested in, arts, music, sports, and whatever kind of lifestyle you like, whether that's spending time out in green spaces or being in the city. There's really something for everyone here. I'd like to firstly debunk the myth that we have bad weather. I don't think we have bad weather at all. We are known for being a rainy country and a country with unpredictable weather. But one good thing about the weather here is that it's never extreme enough to really stop you living your life. So it might get a little bit cold, it might get a bit rainy, but we have some nice summer weather. It never gets really, really, really cold. So your life can usually carry on as normal without too much disruption. It's a very easy to explore country. So if you're thinking about moving to the UK and then maybe exploring some of the different areas of the UK, going to visit some other cities, we have a really good transport network. It's very easy to move around by train, by bus. Even smaller villages and towns tend to have fairly good public transport links in most circumstances, not saying everywhere. We're a very historical country, as Danielle mentioned at the beginning. We have a really rich history. So if you want to go visiting, go delving into English history, we have castles, old houses, very old locations, historical parts of towns, and that's something that also adds to the beauty of the country, I would say. On top of that, our countryside is very varied. So being a small island, we've got a bit of everything, some beautiful areas of coastline, national parks, hills, mountains, rivers, lakes, anywhere that you might end up visiting whilst you're in the UK. We are, as also mentioned, a very multicultural country. And in terms of being multicultural, we have a very wide variety of people living here from lots of different backgrounds. And that also reflects in the way, in the lifestyle of the country. So in terms of the different food that's available, we have food from all backgrounds. In terms of the festivals that are celebrated, anyone can feel at home here because all of those different festivals from all of those different cultures tend to be celebrated at some point in the year. We are a business hub. So we have, for example, many different global businesses and companies based in the UK or with offices in the UK. So it makes it a very good place to be in terms of thinking about working after you graduate or looking for work experience. There are many different companies and industries that you might have the opportunity to be involved with. On a more practical note, we have excellent healthcare. As part of your student visa, you will be able to use the NHS health service. So that means free healthcare and good quality healthcare for everybody. What have I missed on here? Sports, music, and arts events. So as I said, whatever you're interested in, there's lots of things to see and do. We have various major sports and music events throughout the year. Every city in the UK tends to have stuff going on, musical acts to see, theatres, performing arts is quite big in the UK. Sports events, anything that you could imagine that you might want to see, you'll be able to find it somewhere in the UK. Let's move on to the next slide. Thank you, Danielle. So I'm now going to talk a little bit more specifically about your life in the UK in terms of the kind of university that you might choose. So very loosely, we can divide the universities into two types. So we have campus universities and city universities. The camp, oh, sorry, Danielle. Sorry. Actually, it doesn't make too much difference, but anyway, just to give you an idea, you can see on the pictures here, we've got cities which are based in universities which are based in very lovely green spaces, and universities which are based in the city. You will find there is some variation between the universities. So, for example, if you are thinking of a campus university or you're looking at campus universities, you might find that some campus universities are on beautiful green spaces where everything is together. So all the university buildings, accommodation, necessary facilities are together. And that campus might be a short distance from a city centre or a town centre, or it might be a bit further out. Similarly, with the city universities, you might find that the city buildings, the university buildings in the city are spread out across the city, which means some moving around. Or you might find that the buildings are quite compact and together, almost like a campus within the city. So you can't quite divide them dramatically into two different types. So that's worth bearing in mind when you're thinking about a campus or a city university. Where is it located? How are the buildings distributed? What's your life going to be like on those campuses or in that city university? I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about the pros and cons. Thank you, Danielle. So in terms of a campus university, let's talk about the positives first. So firstly, you've got everything in one place. So you're already taking quite a big step in terms of moving to the UK and going to university in the UK. So maybe you're thinking you'd like to make your life a little bit easier, have everything on your doorstep, as it were, and not have to worry too much about traveling around, in which case a campus university could be a good option. It's quick and easy to get around a campus, usually walking, or if it's a particularly big campus, you might have a hopper bus that goes around the campus from building to building. As I mentioned, campus universities tend to be quite green and beautiful, based kind of in a grassy area or with some parkland around. So if that's the kind of environment that you might enjoy, then that's something to think about. Because it is a campus, you have a really good community feel. So all of the students are based in one place, and there's a big sense of community there. You're going to bump into people that you know from your course or from your accommodation, for example, really easily. It might feel safer. You know, we have on-site security on campuses. So because you are all together as students, you're being looked after as students. You're not in the middle of a city somewhere where you're integrated within the city. So it might feel a bit secure on the campus. And it can be a little bit cheaper to live on a campus university purely because it's designed for students. So when you go to the campus bar or to the student union, the prices are likely to reflect the prices which are affordable for students, and you're not paying the prices which are aimed at inhabitants of the city. That said, there are a few negatives to being on a campus. It just depends on what your priorities are. So depending on where the campus is, as I said, you might have to travel to the city or to the supermarket or to the shops that you want. So you might find that there's a bit of a journey to make and that you don't have everything very conveniently right next to you. It might mean that you find you don't leave the campus as much. So if you are on a campus, perhaps you get used to life there, but it means that you don't go out and explore because you have everything very close to you. And some people might find that a bit insular or a bit claustrophobic, depending on the kind of person you are and the kind of lifestyle that you want. On-campus accommodation is usually available. It may only be available for the first year. So when you're thinking about doing an undergraduate degree, you need to think about the feasibility of where you're going to live after that first year and how easy it's going to be moving from your accommodation to the campus. That's an overview of campus life. A city university has other benefits. So it's close to everything that you need, usually, if you are based in the city. You're integrated into city life. So if you feel like you want to live a life where you are a student, but you also feel like you're doing real life in the city, then a city university might be better for you. You've got lots of opportunities on your doorstep. So if you are thinking about going out to events or joining clubs in the city, for example, that's something that would be really easy for you. Every uni in the UK tends to have societies as part of its university culture. So on a campus university, you would have that, but in the city, you might find that you have more opportunities to do things outside of university. If you're looking to do part-time work, that could be very useful for you. And there may be lots more accommodation options. So if you are thinking of studying at a city university, you're not only limited to the campus accommodation, for example. There might be lots of other areas of the city that you could live in and move from your accommodation to the city centre. A few cons to being at a city university. One is that depending on the university, you might find that the university buildings are all over the city. So they might be close together, but in other circumstances, you might have to travel from one building to another. And for that reason, it can raise the cost if you're thinking about public transport costs and that kind of thing. You may need to travel quite a lot in those circumstances, but then again, you might have other things easily on your doorstep, like supermarkets and bars, restaurants, places to meet friends, that sort of thing. Next slide, please, Danielle. So really, it's down to you. It's a very individual choice. Consider what's important to you while you study and the kind of person you are. So whether you want peace and quiet and a green space around you, whether you want to be part of a small community, or whether you want to be more in the bars of the city with lots of options, lots of choices around you, and very close to nightlife. If that's something that's important to you, bear in mind that you need to, you might be limited on a campus in terms of there being the student union or the student bar. But if you go out into the city, there are lots of other places to hang out. Next slide, please, Danielle. Just going to talk a little bit about the cost of living now. I am not going to try and give you sort of an overview of this is how much it costs in this city, this is how much it costs in this city, but more things to think about in terms of how your costs are going to add up when you're at university. The first thing to think about is accommodation. That's going to take a big chunk out of your budget each month. And that really will depend on the kind of accommodation you want. It could cost £90 a week. It could cost double that, depending on where you want to live. You're likely to have various options: living in a shared student house, for example, living in university halls, which are run by the university. Living in a studio would be at the top end of the scale if you feel like you want to live somewhere on your own. So it's really worth researching what kind of accommodation options there are and how much that is going to cost you. Bearing in mind also that some accommodation will come with bills included, for example, but other accommodation will not, and you'll need to factor that in as well. Think about your location. Where are you going to be living? What's the cost of living like in that city? That does vary across the UK. I could say very, 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 very generally that the north tends to be a tiny bit cheaper than the south, but that's about as far as the rule will go. And it's not a rule, it will vary depending on where you choose. Something to bear in mind also is the city's student population. So if you're going to a city where there are a lot of universities, a lot of students, then you can expect that in that city there will be events and discounts, for example, geared towards students, more than a city which perhaps has a smaller student population. Think about how you like to live, what you like to do in terms of food and drink. So if you like eating out all the time, that's going to take a big chunk out of your budget. The UK isn't a culture where we tend to eat out every night for dinner, for example. It can add up in terms of cost. We tend to do it for a treat more than we do regularly. But in terms of cooking for yourself, there are various supermarkets ranging from very cheap to much more expensive, and these are the kind of things you need to think about. Think about your lifestyle, how much money that's going to take out of your budget, and also the kind of things you like to do for entertainment. So whether you're going to want to be out in cafes and bars, for example, hanging out with your friends, or whether you're more likely to stay at home and entertain at home. Next slide, please, Danielle. So I'm just going to give you a bit of guidance in terms of doing your research for cost of living. There are lots of websites which rank cities in order of affordability. And most of these provide cost of living figures and then a breakdown. These are quite good as a very general idea in terms of this is how much it costs. But like I said, accommodation can vary wildly depending on the kind of accommodation that you want. Many universities will also provide average cost of living figures. So when you are thinking about university and researching, see if you can find out from them how much they estimate that you need to live a student lifestyle as they consider it in their university. And one very important thing, which I'll finish with, is that when you do apply for your visa and you're looking at the cost of living requirement for that visa, that is not necessarily a true reflection of how much life is going to cost you. It is going to depend on the factors that I've talked about so far. So just to bear that in mind, you may need to budget a bit more or maybe a bit less, depending on what you decide.
Great, thank you, Rosanna. And that brings us to the end of our presentation today. We really hope that that was useful to the audience, and we're happy to take any questions. I've just listed our contact information on this slide here, and we're more than happy if anyone wants to reach out to us directly, or we've got an opportunity to answer any questions now.
Thank you so much for that incredibly helpful information all across the board. I don't see that we have any questions just yet, but we do know that one of a more popular question that we get is about internships. Is it required, or is a student required to have an internship to have a successful application to any particular universities?
I'm happy to take that. It kind of touches a little bit on what I did. Unfortunately, it will depend. You do need to do your research. This is where it will almost always tell you on the website. But what you want to do is look at the very specific program, the course that you're applying for. It will usually list on there what it is that they need from you, whether it is just volunteering experience or a really specific internship. There are some programs that will require something like that. And again, and I know I said it in the presentation, a lot of the time they tend to be the more competitive programs or the professional programs that will be asking for things like that. Medicine is a really common one. So unfortunately, it's really difficult to say that this university always requires an internship or this particular program always requires an internship, because it will vary a little bit between all of the different programs at different universities. So do that research, but also make sure you read it, because although it might say an internship, it might not require you to be doing an officially recognized, organized internship. They might just require you to have some volunteering experience, or extracurricular activity might cover this kind of skills that they're looking for. Another thing to find out is, obviously, we've just been through a really weird time with COVID. And so in some situations, it may not have been very easy for you to get those kind of work experiences or internships or volunteering experiences. Most universities have been very accommodating for that. And over the next couple of years, you'll see it slightly vary between universities. So when it asks for something, if you can't meet it because it just wasn't possible for you in the last 2 years, contact the university. And I know we've said that a couple of times, but it is, if it's not clear on the website, or you think it's being quite clear, but you just want to check, just ask us. Again, it's a good question for people like us, because that is part of what our jobs are, is to help guide you through that process. So please ask us. But don't be put off immediately if it says the word internship, because the word internship can mean different things in different places, and it doesn't always have to be really official, really organized. It may just be that they're looking for you to have demonstrated interest in that particular subject area, so that you can perhaps talk about it a little bit more in an interview. That is very common in medicine. And some other healthcare programs in particular, because we just want to know that you understand the realities of the program that you're applying for. That could be in other professional courses, and it could be in non-professional courses as well. But for the likes of medicine, what we don't want you to do is to be applying for medicine and thinking, oh, it's going to be like ER or Grey's Anatomy, because it's not that glamorous. Healthcare is it's a lot of hard work. It can be quite involved with people, and that's not always an easy thing to do. So sometimes when they're asking for some kind of experience, what they're looking for is that you understand the reality of the thing that you're applying for. So yeah, it's not a straightforward answer. Check the website first and specifically check the program page of the website. If it's not clear or you've got follow-up questions, have a look at that program page. If they've got contact details, then you can do it there. If they don't, go to the general information for international students, and usually there'll be contact details either for the International Recruitment Office or for the individual people that can help you with your questions. But sorry, it's not a straightforward answer, but hopefully that was useful.
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you. I'm going to post the links to the fair in the chat box there. But before we go, we have a few more questions specifically about fees and scholarships. So I'll read our first question and then a couple of follow-ups. Can you advise about different fees for international versus local students? And the next sort of follow-up to that is, are there scholarships available for any universities in the UK? If so, how do you apply?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the first part of that question about the difference between what we call home student fees and international fees. So in the UK, the government sets a cap on the amount of fees that we can charge for domestic students. And so the rest of the fee for programmes in the UK is often subsidised because we're not allowed to charge any more than the cap that is set by the UK government. And that's why you'll often notice a disparity between the domestic fee and the international fee. We often get asked sometimes questions from students who aren't sure what fee category they might fall into. If perhaps you've got family in the UK or you've spent time in the UK previously, or you've been residing in a different country, and often all you need to do is contact the university and they will carry out a fee assessment, asking you for some basic information, and we carry out that assessment to determine what your fee status would be. So if there's ever any uncertainty, if you think that you might be eligible for the home student fee, then do contact the respective universities and they'll be happy to check that for you. And then the second part of the question about scholarships, I'm not sure if anyone wants to jump in specifically, but just to say that most universities in the UK have some form of scholarship provision available. It really varies massively across different universities. But a really great place to start doing your research on that is on the university website. It can be as simple as a quick type into Google, X university scholarships for international students, and you'll often find lots of really useful information there. You might also find that the university contacts you directly when you've applied to inform you about any scholarship opportunities that you may be eligible for. But as I said, it varies massively from different university to university. But there does tend to be quite a wide range and different levels of scholarships available. And some of them might be academic scholarships based on your, previous study and your results. Others might be for specific subject areas. Some universities do sports scholarships. So really quite a wide range. And I would always encourage you, as Emily said, if you've got any questions about the information you find online, or if you're really keen to know more about a particular university and what they offer, do get in contact with them or with us or our equivalents at different universities. And we're more than happy to tell you about what the opportunities are and how to go about accessing those and applying for those.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We've had a couple of other questions come through, but as we're just finishing up the end of this presentation and getting ready to go into the virtual fair breakout rooms to visit each university, I'm going to encourage you, if your question has not been answered, to send an email to one of the email addresses listed. The representatives that have been here today are more than happy to answer any remaining questions that you have. I also hope that you will jump into some of the university rooms with the meeting rooms that are represented here today. Thank you again for our wonderful panel to give us such helpful information about all of the options available to students who are considering moving forward to the UK. We look forward to seeing you all in the breakout rooms as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
I think we're still live, and I think we can just sign off.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Thank you.